All right, welcome everybody. This is Patrick Durkin from the Wellness Enterprise, and I am so excited to have our friend Jessica Smith here today. I'm excited about this Tuesday podcast for podcast Zoom, whatever we call it, for two particular reasons. One is I love the taste of fresh vegetables from the garden. Like they're just so much better than anything else. And two is I love passionate people, and Jessica is passionate about helping us grow those amazing vegetables in our garden. So how does it get any better than that? Really, really excited that you're here, Jessica. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's really great to see you again. So Jessica, give us a quick update on your the development of your career. Like I know you've embarked on a field of study at Iowa State University, and you're off doing a big 4-year project. And tell us a little bit about what you're up to.
Yes, so I was on my homestead in Virginia, and I was growing food and had animals and all kinds of amazing experiences. And then at a certain point, I realized I was doing what I was enjoying doing, but I wanted to do it with other people. So I was kind of like by myself out there, and I'm like, okay, I knew I liked gardening, but I didn't know I liked gardening with other people, or growing with other people. Like, I was so focused on gardening. I was just like, it's kind of lonely, when you're out here, and it's so much more fun when you can discuss what's happening and like learn from each other. So I was like, you know what, I want to go back to school and learn more and start being a teacher and get involved in teaching more of this, like in a physical person-to-person level. So I ended up joining Iowa State University. Currently, I'm just employed as a researcher as an intro into my PhD program, which starts in August. And I started my research early. So the research that I'm doing as part of this program is to look at the mechanisms behind increased water holding capacity under perennial crops versus corn. And I'll be picking out the mechanisms such as microbial interactions or influences on soil structure, plant root influences on soil structure, and other various things I can tease out from the research that I'm doing. And then we'll be able to determine how can we utilize these grasses and more perennial systems to build soil structure in light of the changing climate, building resiliency in our agricultural systems. And the research is just going to continue building from there. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm also going to be simultaneously teaching soil science at another university and just continuously making friends and finding my other garden nerds and stuff out there. So I've contacted the local elementary school to start trying to get gardens and the educational program for those kids to learn how to grow their own food, where food comes from, and just to integrate it into our standard curriculums, because I think it's such a great opportunity for hands-on learning and experience with the kids. So in a nutshell, that's where my path has turned recently.
That's beautiful. It's nice to know that your work with the soil has inspired you enough that now you want to work with others and the soil. Yeah, because when I met Jessica, like her passion growing up, it was your grandfather's farm and land that you grew up around, right?
Mm-hmm.
And her passion for it is just like, it's as strong as my passion for structured water has been for the last 10 years. And, it's just, it was a really great match for us to come together, because Jessica, is really focused on the soil, but now the water piece has come in for you. Like you knew about structured water when we met, but I think you've really deepened your understanding since then. And to see that you're doing discovery around the microbiome and that you're really engaging that and in an academic setting with peers, I think it's really exciting what you're up to.
Yeah, the universe is kind of aligned because I didn't pick this project. I just wanted to start the program. And so the program is a double major in soil science and sustainable agriculture. And the way it works is you reach out to an advisor who is in your field of interest. So my field of interest was plant soil microbe interactions. And then so I reached out to an advisor, and he had to get funding in order to bring me on as a PhD student. And then this is the project that they had. And I was like, I could totally go deeper into soil and water. Like the opportunity opened up to like dive more into like water interactions, the magical properties, and the physics behind those properties and all that really cool things.
That's awesome. So you guys, one of the things I want you to hear about Jessica is how deep she is in soil and water, and how into the science she is, and how nerdy she is about all this. I mean, this is the sleeve she wears in the world. And so if you know of somebody that's playing that game at a deep level and wants to be connected to a community, you can hear she's getting visible and finding her tribe. So if you know somebody, let's introduce her and let's let them know each other, and they can be on the discovering edge while we do our little stuff of like trying to know who we are and be the best version of ourselves, and hopefully grow some stuff at our own homes. So Jessica, with all that wonderful academic stuff, I want to bring it back now into a world where it's a lot of people in my community, we're just people. Like we're just a mom or a dad or a husband or a wife, a brother or sister. We're living in a house. We're doing what we're doing in the world. We have emotions. We have confusion about the world that we're living in today. We have some concerns about food security that we've never had before. We have concerns about chemicals and toxins, and the quality of food, and can we get our hydration from our plants? And we're just regular people like dealing with those type of questions. And so my first question for you is, as you look at the events that are going on in the world, have they influenced the way you would answer the question about why is home gardening important?
Yep, absolutely. Yes, that has been like food security has been on the radar. And, everybody I speak to, people like there was a huge increase in demand for gardening supplies over the last couple years, as well as seeds, and people running out of seed, like companies running out of seeds initially, and now they're like more well prepared for the interest that people have. But everything has interest in all things related to gardening has increased with all the stuff happening in the world today, and just realizing how fragile our food system is, and the food in the store, if it doesn't get put back on the shelves, it's not that long of a stock that they keep for fresh produce. So growing your own food is becoming just a critical thing to know how to do. But more than that, it's good for us. It's good for dealing with the stress of thinking about what's happening with the world today. But yeah, growing food and increasing food security is definitely important. And we used to do it. We used to grow like 40% of our own produce during wars in the past. And there's plenty of land to feed all the people in the US. There's literally plenty of land. We just need more people growing food. And it's not so much of like a food quantity, but it's food access and distribution. And that's where a lot of the like insecurity lies, more so than can we grow enough food. So if we are growing more gardens and we are utilizing more local spaces and supporting the local farmers around us who are already growing food in a way that we like and we support and that we're interested in, those are all ways to lift up our local food system, because that's the only way to be secure, is to know that you have plenty of food locally and that people can eat.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that you turn it to, it's a great way of like being in this world is like, we're stressed. We're all stressed. Just the traffic I was driving in today was stressful. I was noticing that the highways are like they're just more complex, and the number of signs and crossing lanes, like we've seen all the construction over the years building out more lanes, and now as those lanes merge, it's a little more stressful. There's stress everywhere. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've noticed over the last year is that some people, if you like hand them corn in a stalk, they're like confused about where the corn is. Or if you hand them a sweet potato with dirt on it, they're like, it's dirty. And so, we talk about like inspiring people to grow their own food, and they're intimidated by food in its natural way. So let's talk about like building a bridge for people. How do we go from, I don't know anything about growing my own food. I feel intimidated. I don't even know what food looks like when it's in its raw form. Let's start for the people that might be there. How do we talk to them and help them see into this issue and get started?
Yeah, it's really just not trying to bite off more than you can chew. If you're starting from scratch with like no background, I would just choose like one thing that well, I would first find out, like learn a little bit about your climate and your plant like hardiness zone, and then use that as a foundation to, you can easily find a list of crops that grow and when they grow. And you could just choose one thing out of that you would like to experiment with in a small area and just grow something. And just the experience of doing that will increase your confidence and allow you to build slowly upon that. I think that's where people usually get overwhelmed and stop trying, is they are like, okay, I'm going to plant this half-acre garden and I'm going to have like 20 different varieties of everything, and like the weeds start coming and then everything gets overwhelming, and the thing that's supposed to help you manage stress is now causing stress. So just choosing like if just doing a raised bed, and then making sure that you're aware of if you have a lot of rabbits or deer in your area. That's a good way to, hang on a second, I have a cat who's very mischievous right now. I'm just going to Obi, come here. No.
As a dog owner myself, we got plenty of space for you. You take care of whatever needs to get done.
Okay. So anyways, he's just trying to pull a tapestry off my wall, and he knows he's not supposed to. So yeah, so you can choose like a raised bed and put up a fence around it to keep the the rabbits and stuff out. And hold on a second, I'm just gonna put him out of the room real quick.
Yeah, that's okay. Because I've been having my road trip. I'm driving around Florida now, and I'm traveling with my dog Blue, and so I can relate to the minor pet interruptions. Blue, now that he's 5, has been getting comments of being a more Zen-like dog and a quieter participant, which is good because he used to go in and like just immediately chase all the rabbits out of the neighborhood, and yeah, so it's fun to be on the road with the dog. And you're back.
Yes, I am. I put him out. That was his way of telling me he does not want to be in the room with me anymore, and he has slept beside me for long enough. So okay. Yeah, so just growing in a small area, choosing 1 or 2 things that, maybe some tomatoes, and some basil. Tomatoes and basil, you can eat them together. It's like they grow during the same time, and that gives you a little bit of experience. And you can grow, if you wanted to like take it to the next level, you could grow some lettuce under your tomato plants with your basil, and then you have enough for like salad with tomatoes and fresh basil. And that's like a very easy system, and it's just like setting yourself up for success. So not overwhelming yourself from the beginning, taking off small bite-sized like things, and then the next year you might add on some bell pepper plants, or you might add on whatever grows in your area that you actually like to eat. You might try putting like a potato tower up, depending on the space that you have available, or planting potatoes, or, like you just gradually start adding on things that you like as you become more comfortable. And, another thing to do is just connect with your community, see if there's like avid gardeners already who you can pair up with, and you can learn from them and see what they're doing. And then eventually you might be able to form a group of people who are all growing different things, so you can trade with them. Like maybe you're growing like lettuce and tomatoes and peppers and basil, and somebody else is growing like potatoes and corn and squash, and you get to like trade off a little bit or something like that. So it's a great opportunity to network and connect with your community, but also to build like a resilience from within like a whole web of interactions. And that's also great, because then if something you have fails and you've been like sharing with your neighbor for so long, you guys have developed a relationship, you can continue supporting each other, with food security issues if they came up.
I love that. You have so many creative ideas. And yeah, I really love that because, people are getting lost in separation these days. We drop into our silos and we forget how to say hi to somebody. And then we forget, like, well, if I did say hi, what could we find in common that's actually reflective of my values? Right. Because the illusion of like going out to have a drink, like that might not work for a lot of people anymore. And it's like, well, let's make a plan for a web of food security that just starts with, hey, I'll grow the tomatoes, you grow the basil, or, whatever the complements are. That sounds really cool. One of the earliest things I grew was actually radishes. I mean, they're not great to have a harvest of radishes by yourself. You really like spicy stuff, but it's good for getting success of I can grow something and it comes out of the ground pretty fast. I also bumped into a arugula seed that had been brought over from Italy and was really good. And one of the things I love about arugula, this was a shock for me when I started gardening. Like, so the arugula grows up and I eat what I eat, and then it goes to seed. And it's like, there's like 10 million arugula seeds at the top of my plants. And it's like, I learned to gather a jar of them every year. And then, the next year I just start putting those seeds out.
Yeah, same thing happened with me. I grew okra and I was like, I love okra. I'm gonna eat so much okra. And then like 20 pods get past me and I just leave them on the plant to harvest. And I've got like thousands of okra seeds. And I think that that's also part of it is learning how to save seeds. And so you can start a seed library in your area and start connecting and building up seed stores, and sharing with people. And then also just like when you were talking about connecting with people and having a shared interest, like for me, like the going out to a bar thing doesn't really work for me. I don't do that. And so if it's like, let's meet up in the garden, I've had some of the most deep conversations that connected me so tight with whoever I was gardening with. It's just like such a meditative process, and you can have long discussions weeding that like you get to know people so well. You're like experiencing something with them and you're like sharing that time.
You're saying it's easier to talk over flies and bees than loud music and
yeah, there's something very soothing about like repetitive tasks, or just like, I don't know, you're out in the fresh air and sunshine, and like all the negative ions are coming out of the earth, and like you're calm and your mind is like open and you're just able to go deeper. I feel like it's like yoga for your brain, it's just like opening up and you just get to connect and dive in with people.
Yeah. I like those kind of tasks too. I feel like I already like took you toward this topic, but just in case you have a little more, I want to just probe a little deeper. So let's say somebody is renting, or they don't own where they are. Maybe they're even in a manicured community where everything's like HOA, you got to follow the rules. You can't do this and you can't do that. There's a lot of that out there in the world right now. Do you have any specific suggestions for people like that?
Well, I feel like I've noticed it seems like some of those regulations are a little bit more lenient with all the COVID stuff that's happened because people got really scared. So I think that my biggest advice is just make it pretty. Well, first off, you obviously know what the regulations are. Like if you absolutely cannot till the ground or can't like disturb the ground, or it has to be able to be converted back when you move or something like that, then find out what the rules are and then just be open and honest. Because if we try to like, be like, well, I'm going to do this anyways, and then, I think having some form of inclusivity where you're including the people who are making the rules, and you're like answering to like, okay, this I want to create the possibility that I can have a garden. What do I need to do in order for that to be okay? And then fit within those parameters. If it's like, okay, you need like to have planters, okay, great. You can do a raised bed maybe. Just have a neat border, whatever it is that you need to do to fit within their guidelines. I'd say it's important to do that so that you keep like a good relationship. And once they see what you've done is beautiful, then they might start like changing the rules and allowing more and more food to be produced in your area.
I really admire your elegance and your gentility. Like you're really wonderful suggest doing that within the rules. Cause like when I started gardening and taking care of a lawn in Hull, Massachusetts, I was like, lawn, forget this. And I just started spreading wildflower seeds and milkweed seeds all over my yard. And I was there 10 years and I would cut I can't really call it grass. I would cut my yard like once a year or maybe twice a year. And it turned very colorful and it was amazing. And there were no butterflies when I arrived. And after 10 years, there were butterflies everywhere. And I took a lot of pride in that. But I had neighbors who screamed at me about it. Like, so that you suggest how to do it and be within the rules. I tip my cap to you.
Yeah. You could also, there's now a lot of things happening where people want to support the pollinators. There's wildlife habitat restoration, and you can put up like a sign and like be like this, like, I've walked around this neighborhood I'm in, and there's like signs that are like, please like pardon like the mess, we're saving the bees, or something like that. And it's just like there's a little bit of, some of it has like some educational component. And so maybe if you're not like spreading it out on your yard, but you have like planters of pollinator plants, or you have very organized formations of it, which is like maybe not as like natural, and like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But if you're like within the system, like we can still do so much, but like keep people happy. And then I feel like if you don't just like, if you're having a conversation and people feel involved, they're way less likely to get upset than if you're just like, you know what, like they didn't have a say. It's just like a human psychology thing. Like if they feel involved, then they're like, oh, like if you're like, hey, I'm having a discussion with you, I live beside you, I want to do this, it's super important to me, and you like share from like that space, I feel like people are receptive.
Love that.
Yeah, yeah.
We need to build communities, not break them down, and not have fights over rules. So I really do tip my cap to the way you're approaching it. Like I like it. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, well, I think that part of it too is like now I'm at Iowa State University, where I am surrounded by people who believe in like certain systems that I don't believe in, or I want to help farmers, but like they're in a completely different system than I'm interested in. So for me, like I'm behind the lines, and I'm coming to farmers as a friend and not as like an outsider who's like, whatever you're doing is wrong, like, all this stuff. I'm coming from like hey, like I care about you, I know you care about your family, like tell me about what you're doing, tell me about what's working, tell me about what's not working, how can we adjust and tweak a few things that you feel comfortable with. And then eventually, once like y'all friends, then they're more receptive to what you have to say, versus coming from an outside view like, hey, you're doing this wrong, all this is bad. Like the more you learn about it, the more you're like, oh, like, yeah, like they just care about, like, most of the time the farmers here don't own the land, so why would they be interested in investing in it? And so there's a lot of things that if we just take the time to listen, we just realize, oh, like we're all humans and we all do care about something, and maybe the connections, if the connections can be made through the conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amen to that. Beautiful. So I'm going to direct the topic into kind of the next theme a little bit, and moving toward soil and water. So I think when we first met, you hadn't experimented with structured water in a garden before, and now you've got 2 seasons under your belt.
Yep.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your experience with growing with structured water. Does it make a difference?
I think that it makes a difference. Personally, I've seen the difference between the like, I've noticed that when I irrigate with structured water, and then between the time that I irrigate and the next time that I irrigate, the plants are able to maintain their hydration for longer periods of time. And that the plants just seem to be like super robust and glossy. And I think that it's from not only just like the hydration aspect of the structured water, but also the microbes, the water's easier to access for them. They're able to support the plants with microbial metabolites, but just increasing their activity and populations. But really, it's if the organism doesn't have to take the energy to form something into like the natural form that water occurs in us as like structured water, then the excess energy we don't have to use can go to other things. So for the plant, that excess energy can be used to create complex compounds that protect it. And so for me, I've just noticed that when I use structured water in my nutrient applications, it seems like it's able to be uptaken by the plants more effectively. And yeah, I integrated it right into my small scale irrigation system. It was super easy. And yeah, if I use it in my compost tea, all the stuff that has to do with like gardening and even my own consumption of food and water. So for me, I've definitely noticed a difference in the vitality of my plants as well as the effectiveness of what I use in my garden.
Nice. And so there's kind of there. So that's the water piece. Like it's helping you create healthier, vibrant plants. And you have a piece where you've developed a garden kit for people. And I know it's like it's not the soil alone, it's not the water alone. It's like the soil and the water. So tell us a little bit about the garden kit that we're going to share with people today, and what's essential to partner with this living water to make sure you're going to get the best shot at a healthy crop.
Right. So the kit that I made was just because like I get kind of like super nerdy when it comes to garden amendments, and I would just be like, oh my goodness, I use like this kelp product, and then I use this like rock phosphate, and then I use this rock dust and azomite and like all these different things. And then I realized that people were like having trouble sourcing all the materials, and then they had small spaces, so it didn't make sense to try to buy in bulk. And like for me, it was just like a convenience factor to put together a kit to make it more likely that people could grow this quality of food more readily, no matter what the size. And so the kit that I have, it involves a soil mineral amendment. So I've combined all these different amendments into one like powdered form, and that can be incorporated into your compost or incorporated into your garden soil, or you can use your compost to apply the powder and like spread it out evenly on your garden. Or so there's like this mineral component of soil and making sure all the minerals are there so that the microbes can access them, digest them. It's like the substance to their diet, not just the cakes and cookies that the plants are pumping out. So there's like these building blocks for microbes and for plants, and we want to make sure that that's present so the plants like rhizosphere, the digestive system, can digest all those minerals and nutrients through microbes, through direct like absorption, through dissolving and absorbing. And so I have a mineral component for soil. Then I have an inoculant that I use, which has all the different beneficial microbes for plants that you apply to the seeds or to the roots directly, because it's a root association that's happening. So you want to make sure you get contact. And then I have 3 different liquid products. So I have something called Bio Booster, which kind of boosts the microbial populations. So that means that they'll digest more nutrition and they'll provide more nutrition to your plants. And then I have a macro boost and a micro boost. So that's your macronutrients and your micronutrients. And the whole protocol is a preventative one. So I like to focus on health. I like to focus on health and not fighting things. So I like to take a preventative approach where I install my garden, I incorporate my soil minerals, I take my seeds, I inoculate them, I plant them in the garden, and then I use the structured water when I'm mixing my different foliar sprays and soil drenches. So anything that has to do with a liquid. And then when I'm watering my garden. So once I have the seeds planted, I will have a schedule where I mix the bio booster, macro boost, and micro boost according to like the area size that I have. And I just apply it like every 2 weeks, regardless. Like you don't want to wait until your plants are suffering to try to fix it, because at that point they're so far, like if they're able to like show you physically something's wrong, then like you're already like past that point. So it's a lot harder to recover. So for me, I like to just do a preventative protocol, and I just made it easy, put it all into like a kit for people that's easy to apply with like easy instructions. And yeah, it makes it a lot easier to like set up a garden and then not have to struggle and with growing food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of getting ahead of it. Like when I was learning how to garden, it was like, the moment would come about 4 to 6 weeks after my zucchini started really growing, when they would start to dehydrate. And, that's how I learned season after season that it was the same kind of squash borer that was getting me. And it's like, we learned to like put saran wrap on the root and like try and tape it back together. But like once you're repairing, it's the beginning of the end. You're just not going to get a lot more production out of that. Yeah. And so your kits are usually how much? They're $99? Is that?
Depends on the size. I have ones that are for like 50 square feet of space, 100 square feet of space, and 250 square feet of space. So it's just depends on the size. But yeah, I think it's like $79, but there's a discount right now.
Great. Yeah, I appreciate that. Guys, Jen pasted in the top of the chat before we started a link to Jessica's kit. So if you want to check that out, and there's a coupon there for you guys as well. And I guess if we put this on a web page, Jen, we'll want to put that link and that coupon underneath it so that people can find it. And so is there enough there so every year they're going to use a kit like that? Like, is it necessary to keep adding to your soil every year, or is soil just good enough sometimes?
Well, we're never really starting with healthy soil. And so we have to focus on both healthy soil, like soil health and plant health at the same time. And I feel like it's possible to create like a robust microbially like rich soil that will support your system. But as long as you are harvesting every year and you're removing a lot of those minerals without adding anything back, then it is necessary to keep putting an input in there, unless you're going to take those, take your residues and do composting. But what I've found is that like maybe years down the line, if you are really focusing on building microbial communities and building organic matter, and you're focusing on optimizing plant photosynthesis, that you can basically create a system that injects so much good into the soil that it's offsetting what you're harvesting. So that would be the ultimate goal. And then, so I feel like when it comes to optimizing photosynthesis, because that's like the basis of everything, you're really needing to focus on that soil moisture that's like critical for photosynthesis. And then, like I said, the soil carbon, adding organic matter so that you have bacteria and fungi and other higher forms of microbes who are eating, predatory microbes who are eating the bacteria and fungi. And you want to just focus on the microbial activity by keeping like a plant on the ground with like active roots, and applying nutrients and applying boosters that will help support the populations. And then making sure, like, if it's a plant that needs sunshine, that it has plenty of sunshine, like, so that it can effectively photosynthesize enough to support itself. And then, like I said, the minerals, just making sure the minerals are present. And really, like, the ultimate goal would be to create like such a healthy system that it can take care of itself. but we have to be doing things such as like cover crops underneath the plants that we're harvesting and really trying to focus on soil microbiology.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Hey guys, I'm reaching the point where my prepared questions are exhausted, and now I'm just going to be jumping around. So that means there's room for you guys to jump in and ask questions too. So if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. And I've got a few more. I'm going to mine the chat for things you guys have been sharing. So one of my questions about your kit, Jessica, is how many individual items are in the kit, and what have you done to help me if I feel like I'm going to get overwhelmed with not knowing how to use it?
Yep. So there's 3 liquid products. There's a powdered inoculant for your seeds, and then there's a bag of soil amendment minerals. And then, so 5 things. And then within that, I also included like a protocol. So I have instructions for everything, the whole system there. And then you can scan the QR code on the little like instructions card, and it'll take you to a tutorial video where I show you step by step, like how to use everything in the garden.
You guys have never seen a video with Jessica before. She's very thorough. When she says she walks you through every step, I know that she walks you through every step. And as you guys can tell, being with her today, like she's fun to listen to, and she's really deep and knowledgeable. Okay, cool. Well, I knew you would have made that easy, but I just like, it can be so overwhelming. Again, you know, if it's not in a plastic bag from Costco, my brother doesn't understand it's a vegetable. So, you know, it's really important to understand like where people are coming from and want to help them. So, Jude, you had a question in the chat, but you've also got your hand up. So let me turn it over to you, and you could just come on live and ask whatever's on your mind.
I have a shade garden. The sun is just, I live in San Francisco, so there's tall buildings. The sun is just coming over, and I'm getting sun like where I'm sitting right now. It's not even here yet, but on a very small wall, my kitchen wall. So what I do is I plant annuals there for beauty. I used to have zinnias. This year I'm planting cosmos because it just is a very short time that the sun is there. But what vegetables? I also planted yesterday some rosemary and parsley in a planter on that wall because of the sun. But what can I grow that? I prefer pots because I pretty much have the soil pretty much planted with trees and hydrangeas and things like that. What can I grow in pots or planters? It gets brighter now that it's summer, but there's really not a whole lot of direct sun on the garden.
Yes, you're gonna want to think about things like greens, you know, like spinach or arugula or chard or collards or kale, mustard greens, like salad level type plants. Things that produce fruits, they normally need more sun, but if it's more of like a root or a leafy thing, then it can usually get by with less sun. So sometimes you might even be able to do some beets or carrots or radishes and turnips. And sometimes I find that broccoli and cauliflower actually like sun. So even though some people recommend those, depends on the actual amount of sun. But as long as you stick to things like leafy greens and things that produce quickly, then I think that would be fine for that area.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jude. So we had somebody write in the chat that they had she had chickens and she used composted chicken manure, and she didn't have any problem with bugs. It was the healthiest vegetables those years. If you're on like a really tight budget and you're trying to get good soil and collect things that might be free, that you could source like a couple of things that are other people's waste, like find somebody with chickens and clean up some of their poo. What would your suggestions be for like the minimum that you could hope to have pretty good soil year after year if you did a couple of things?
Yep. Making your own compost by gathering free ingredients. I've definitely done this myself. Going to restaurants or places, juice bars are great. They have so much pulp from making juices, and like, you know, they have lots of vegetable and produce waste. That's what you want to target, not so much of like cooked processed foods, but that raw material, because the pulp from juicing the vegetables and fruits is going to be like raw still, so it has more microbial like populations naturally on it to start breaking it down. And so I used to pick up stuff from juice bars, and then I would talk to like the local municipal waste people and find out where's the local pile of wood chips. Sometimes if you just talk to like a tree chipping company or like power line clearing companies, they'll be like, yeah, let me dump wood chips on your property, or they'll let you pick up wood chips for free. Gathering up leaves, also you can sometimes, like normally like communities will, if there's some kind of lawn care company, they have to collect the leaves. Maybe you could ask them what they do with it, and if you could like collect some of it from them. If you live by the ocean, you're very lucky. You could go collect some seaweed and make your own liquid seaweed extract. You can collect small amounts of seawater, a little bit of sea salt that is easy for us to access in health food stores and stuff can be used. But yeah, the compost, and if you can get free like animal manure from like horses or like cows or chickens or goats, that is like a good like jump starter for your compost. So that's good. Saving your own kitchen scraps. I mean, there's any like most waste streams are really good. But I like, if you're like, what's the minimal? I definitely would say, if you're on a small enough scale, like composting and diverting waste streams into like your garden, and definitely ocean. And then going out into the forest or like natural settings and collecting some soil samples and putting those into your compost pile, or some like debris like from diverse areas. You're going to be collecting a more diverse microbial population in your compost pile, and so there's like more native microbes, and so you'll be able to bring that into your garden and all the like benefits that they provide.
That's great. My memory sometimes blurs things together, but my 10 years of gardening are like unfolding before my eyes as you're talking. And I'm remembering I went to my local farm and got 2 pickup truck beds full of horse poo. And I also got beds full of seaweed, and I just threw the seaweed all over my garden. And
That's perfect.
yeah, those are some great things. And I love the juicing suggestion. I mean, that's perfect. Like they're just putting pulp into the waste stream, and you're taking it out and putting it in the garden. Like, how obvious is that?
Right.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and just keeping your garden covered. So mulching is so important. And that, especially if you're like minimal input, that is the best way to save water and to not have the water evaporating off the soil surface, So keeping the soil covered is very important.
Yeah, let's talk about like cover crop and mulching and stuff for a second more, because I think it took me a while to understand that. Maybe some other people have the same kind of issue. Like, why is it so important to not just have like sun on dirt?
Right. Well, there's UV that kills microbes. So that is one reason. Also, evaporation is more like higher if the soil is not covered and it's exposed to sunlight. The soil temperature fluctuates a lot more if there's no insulating factor and the sun is just beaming down on it. So it'll be very extreme fluctuations between day and night. It'll dry your soil out. You might get crust that form depending on what kind of soil you have. And yeah, that's basically it. Like,
yeah, I think there's like this image of like, if you were a gardener who was on top of it, your rows would all be like, really straight, and there'd be like dirt in between. And like, no, I'm just making a new picture in my mind right now. Like, I know that some people even put cardboard down or newspaper down. Do you have any comment on those?
Yeah, that's a really good idea to do that for a weed barrier. Because yeah, like putting wood chips is great, but if you put a layer of cardboard down first, you're good for several seasons of keeping the weeds out.
Love that. Keeping weeds away, man. That's fantastic. All right, Karen, you've been super patient. Sorry to keep you waiting so long, but I just can't help but keep asking Jessica questions. But come on, jump in.
Well, my question is really for you, Patrick, because you said you have all kinds of fruit trees in Florida, and I know they have drought problems down there. So, what fruit trees are like drought resistant, or and what kind of care is required to have the produce that you've been accessing?
That's a good question. I'll give you what I got, which isn't much because I'm not native to Florida, and I'm learning a lot as I'm going through here. But what I see are a lot of mangoes and avocados, and the I stayed with Dr. Marlene Siegel the other day. She's a vet who's very well known, has a wonderful alternative practice, and she described just putting an avocado pit on the ground, and there's this tree that's just super tall, and then it's like, what are those over there? She's like, oh, I threw 5 mango pits over there, and those 5 all took. And so those are 5 3-foot tall mango trees. She's like, I don't know how that's going to sort itself out, but we'll figure that out over time. So papayas, loquats are super easy, and yeah, I think those are the majority of what I saw here. And in terms of being drought resistant, I don't think I can really comment on that because, like Marlene waters, and she has access to water, and those trees get taken care of. Jessica, can you help at all with that?
Yeah, I mean, the drought tolerance, it also is going to depend on where you are. So when I think of what are drought tolerant fruit trees or fruits that I could grow, I would think of what naturally grows in like Mediterranean climates or more drier climates. So like figs are really good, or pomegranates or jujubes, or yeah, definitely the mangoes are sometimes a pretty good. Dragon fruit, I think, is pretty good. Yeah, I would just think of things that naturally grow in like more drier climates, like Mediterranean style things. But it depends on, is this drought plus ample heat and temperature, or is this a cold drought? Like, so you want to think about the temperature hardiness of the plants as well, in addition to the moisture levels when picking different trees.
Oh, very good. Thank you. And I also want to add alpaca poop is the best fertilizer. I forgot about that. That was like, wow, amazing. No
Nice.
comparison. Thank you very much, Jessica. Thank you, Patrick.
No problem.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for jumping in. Another question for the from the chat, Jessica, is what is your opinion on every third year resting the land that's using a 3-lot system for such rotation?
Yeah, I think that is fine. I was just talking to somebody who does farming around here, and they were talking about how like every civilization that like has been a farming civilizations besides the ones where it floods have collapsed, and that's because there's continuous agriculture that's removing soil health, and it's more like an excavating practice versus a remineralizing and rebuilding and regenerative practice. I had some differing thoughts than him. I believe that you can actually restore the land while you grow food if you're making sure you're growing plants that are so fully like photosynthesizing that they're contributing to the soil versus just extracting from it. But I think that the rotational like resting, quote unquote, I would choose like an active rest. So I would grow things maybe that I would still do food production personally. I would not have any rest, because I feel like this idea of rest is like personifying versus like understanding maybe like, oh, like, maybe I shouldn't grow the same crop every year. So the rotation is important, like he mentioned, or she mentioned, I don't remember who you said it was, but say you're like rotating a heavy feeding crop or like a tomato or something like that with maybe a light feeding crop. So like something that doesn't produce fruit. So like herbs or greens or something like lower feeding, like things that don't extract as much. So I would use those plants as a cover crop so that you can at least still harvest food while you're rotating. Or if you're not like, you're like, I don't need to harvest food from this much land, then just a super diverse mix of cover crops with all kinds of varieties of things that are beneficial to microbes, or not microbes, pollinators. I mean, most microbes and pollinators. The more diverse plants that you have, the more diverse your microbial populations, the more diverse the microbial populations will be when you come back around to that piece of land with your crop. So I think that active rest is important by growing diversity of things, whether you want that to be food or whether you don't, or whether you prefer that to be plenty of diverse food for pollinators. I think that either of those options is completely fine. I do like the idea of like continuously having an area that has so many things for not microbes. I love microbes. I'm obsessed with them. So many things for pollinators, so that you constantly have something blooming while you have other areas with crops. That is a really good strategy, but it's more for like bringing in pollinators and bringing in like insects that are predatory to different pests you might have. So increasing the ecosystem diversity, I think, is something to think about when you're thinking about rotations and stuff like
that. Sounds good. Now I've got a quick answer to the next question, but I want to hear your answer. So the question is, does anyone know a good cat deterrent? And of course, my quick answer is, you can invite me to Seattle and Blue and I will hang out for a little while, or you can get a rescue dog of your own. But I know there's things like you pour granulated pee from a bigger animal around the outside of a garden. What have you heard of for deterring a cat?
Yeah, I've experienced what cats can do in gardens, especially when there's like exposed soil that they just love using as a litter box. Some things that I've done, and I'm sure there's other things that other people have done that have been effective, but personally, I have put like fencing over my garden. So say I had raised beds, because when I had this issue, I had raised beds. I took like some kind of fence that has like panels, so like openings. They can be different sizing depending on what you find effective, but maybe a little bit smaller than cow panel, but big enough to where you can still fit your hand in there. If you just like put that over your raised bed, then the cats like can't scratch. They can't get like to the soil and like use a bathroom. Or I would just like have lots of mulch. I would have prickly mulch. I would have straw or things that maybe the cats won't like pawing at, or just really good fencing. That seems to be like the only real way to prevent cats and rabbits and deer and anything else that might enter into the garden that will want to eat your produce or use the bathroom in it.
Well, those all sound good, and I still like the rescue dog idea. Blue has a lot of fun protecting a piece of property. I one year had rabbits eat 60 kale plants, and then I got a dog, and we grew some kale. There's a couple of questions on what's your favorite ground cover and what do you do with it in spring? Pull it out or dig it under, and what's the best mulch for veggies? So kind of related stuff there. Maybe you can take those two together.
Yep. So, man, the cover crop is a tricky question because there's such a diversity you can choose from that it really depends on what your climate is and what your goals are. So if you want to use a cover crop in the fall and winter just to keep the ground covered, but you want to garden in the spring, you would choose a cover crop that winter kills. But whether or not that cover crop winter kills is going to depend on where you are. Like if you have a winter that's cold enough to kill that crop, because I had like this mix of oats and peas one season, and it was supposed to winter kill, but it didn't because it didn't get cold enough. So I still had them growing, so I had to cut them back and mulch over top of them to try to stop them from growing. If you want to grow a cover crop while you have an active vegetable crop, then you're going to want to choose like low growing cover crops that aren't competing with your plants for sunlight. So you could choose like a low growing clover to plant under your tomatoes or other taller plants. You can also use actual vegetable crops as cover crops. So, and there's like stacking ways to grow plants in a way where like the broad leafy ones that don't get tall are around the base of the tall ones, and they're just covering the soil and keeping evaporation down and keeping it shaded and the soil cooler. It really depends on where you are and what you're looking to do. So you might have some more advanced cover cropping would be that you have to like cut it at a very specific stage so that it like terminates the cover crop if you don't want it to keep growing while you're cropping. So it really depends on where you are and what your goals are. Like if you want it to be actively growing while you are planting. I personally I like the winter kill technique and then a low growing one while I'm actively planting, or I just like to mulch with straw or chopped up leaves once the cover kill, like, because it's going to decompose over the season. So you want to have backup if you did a winter kill one. So it's going to like, the soil will eventually be exposed from it breaking down, and you'll want to cover it with mulch before you plant your next cover crop, depending on when you want to do that. So I'd say standard ecological answer is that it depends. But if you just identify what your goals are and what your climate is, that will help you pick the right cover crop system.
Are there, if people feel like too much uncertainty with an answer like that, are there any of the education product resources that you've been affiliated with that might be a good resource if somebody wants to, invest a little bit in getting one of those systems? And or is there somebody, like a type of person to go to locally to have that kind of conversation?
Yeah, I don't know of anybody. Like, the issue is a lot of the commercially available or the programs available are suited towards large scale farmers. But if you talk to like your local co-op or cooperative extension agent, they will be familiar with cover crops for the area, and they might even be able to point you in a direction of like people who use them, or like the master gardeners and stuff like that.
Sounds good. And any of the information products that you guys have that might help?
We don't focus specifically on in-depth cover cropping systems, but I feel like I did have people, during the soil masterclass that I did have 2 people, I think, talk about cover cropping. And if you just like Google cover cropping for small spaces, it's going to give you plenty of resources to work with.
Okay. All right, great. Shira, how's your sound today?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
It's good.
Super. First, a little story. I remember when you were in Hull and the rabbits were eating all your kale. You took a good look at that. You moved into your higher self and you said, I'm going to plant a double crop so the rabbits and I can both have.
Yes, I learned to share. It was a much better thing than filling my my body with cortisol and getting all wigged out about them eating my plants.
Yeah,
so,
my grandpa always told me, just make sure you plant enough for yourself and the animals.
And then I have just put in the chat to buy only seed-free straw because I learned the hard way. I got a couple of bales of straw and I put it all over the place for the winter. And when I got back from Israel that year, I had knee-high grain on every inch of soil. And it took me weeks to pull that out thoroughly because it was going to just keep growing.
Yeah, you can chop and drop if that happens. But did you buy straw or hay?
I bought very carefully straw because I knew that one. Okay. But it had seeds in it. And when I talked to my best my spiritual buddy, who's a master gardener, she said, "Oh, you have to specify seed free."
Okay, I haven't seen like a farm supply store or anything that distinguished seed free versus seeded straw, but if that is a possibility, then yes. Me personally, I've used straw that had oats in it and wheat in it, and it started growing, and I just chopped and dropped it to add to the organic matter in my garden, because it doesn't really, a lot of those are cool season seeds, and so they either fizzle out in the summer, or when I chop them, they get stressed out, and then the summer heat comes and it dies back. As long as you don't let it go to seed again, like once if it's growing and don't let it go to seed, then you'll be fine.
Great. Anything else, Sharon? Well, sure. If you have anything else, go ahead and raise your hand again. Jessica, how do you layer compost?
Depends on what ingredients you have, but and what type of compost pile you're trying to make, because there's a lot of different, there's static compost piles, there's thermophilic compost piles where you're trying to get the temperature up to a certain level to kill weed seeds or to kill pathogens. And then there's like compost bin methods that are out there. And then there's reactors and all kinds of stuff that you can do. But if you're just doing like a cold pile, I recommend layering like a high carbon material on the bottom that has like a lot of, that's like more rough. So there's more air space. So you don't get like this wet, saturated anaerobic layer on the bottom. So make sure you have like a fluff layer of high carbon, like some chopped up branches or wood chips or something like that. And then you can like alternate. So it depends on if you're adding manure or not. If you're just doing like vegetable scraps, then I would just layer vegetable scraps with like dead leaves or straw or whatever like higher carbon material you have access to. But leaves are good, and or wood chips, depending on how fast you want the compost to break down. But if you want it to break down faster, I would throw in some layers of manure with the layers of plant material and brown material, or green material, higher nitrogen material, and brown material.
Okay, sounds good. And I think you used the name of a fertilizer and they asked that you repeat it. Do you recall what that was?
I'm not sure what fertilizer I mentioned.
It was a while ago. D. Wilson, if you can give us any more context, we'd be happy to revisit the question, but I don't have the context right now. Jen has got her hand up. What's going on, Jen?
Okay, so thank you, Jessica. First of all, thank you for all your knowledge and your passion. What did you say? I don't know. Is my volume up?
Yeah,
you're good.
Okay. All right. So the question I'm asking about the compost. So I live in Florida, and for the carbon, what would I get? Would I go get like charcoal, or charcoal is bad?
Oh, when I say carbon, I'm thinking more like things that were chopped when they were dead. So straw is harvested after it's dead, so it's brown. Or wood chips are higher in carbon than nitrogen. Like vegetable scraps are higher in nitrogen, so they're like a green material. They're going to break down quickly and have a lot more moisture. So like a higher carbon material like wood chips or straw is like drier and it like breaks down more slowly, and it'll balance out and keep the smell down from the vegetable scraps.
Okay, so we have like, I guess I'm going to get maybe I'm just thinking maybe a cement black. It's going to be small, maybe 24 by 24. And so I would put the hay, we'll say straw. And then we have somebody who juices, I could throw their juice on there. And then as far as manure, since I don't have access to that, well, and I don't want to go buy it either, because I don't trust somebody that I'm buying at, Home Depot. I trust a farm but whatever. So, but my question is, could I use worm casting tea or something, or make a tea? Would that be equivalent to manure and a layer? And then do I use a big pitchfork and turn it?
Well, yeah. So first off, why is there a reason that you're putting a cement slab in? Is that just to keep it?
I don't even know what to put it on, because we have quite a few restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I really want to compost because I don't like all the waste.
Right. Yeah, I find that I really like setting up my compost on the ground, and if it's like mud or something that you're trying to avoid, then what I would do is, instead of a cement block, I would make a really thick layer of wood chips in a square or whatever shape of the area you're utilizing is.
Okay.
And basically what it means is that there's like the water can drain.
Oh, okay.
And it won't have as much smell because it'll be able to drain. And then your compost will be in contact with the ground so that microbes from the soil can make their way up into the compost. And so it can like incorporate that system into it. So personally, I would do wood chips over a cement like slab, but you can still do that if it's like a requirement for your area to like for visual appeal or anything like that. But that's what I would say for the foundation of it. And then it depends on, you could do like a slower compost without manure at all. Because if you have the juice pulp and more like fresh food scraps, then that will help act as like a nitrogen input. Also, another idea is maybe you would just do worm composting.
Like, do I buy worm composting?
No, I'm saying you can set up a worm bin, like a worm compost bin.
Okay.
If you were just wanting like a way to divert some waste, depending on how much waste you add regularly, you could do a worm composting bin, and that will take care of having to do all the flipping and whatever. It depends on the amount of material you want to divert into your composting. So if it's just like your house scraps, then a worm composting bin might actually be enough to take care of your food waste. But if you're wanting to do it on like a diverting food waste from like the community, then you might,
it's just personal.
Then I would look into vermicomposting or a worm bin.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Or I would look into like a static compost pile. And that's like static, meaning you don't turn it.
Oh, okay.
Or cold composting, because you would be doing like a more gradual add-in of materials if it was just from your house. So a lot of times those compost piles that need a lot of flipping and stuff like that and get hot and everything, those are like piles that you collect all the material ahead of time, and then you build the pile, and then like you maintain the pile, but you're not adding stuff after you've built it. So if you want to do one where you're gradually adding things, I would look into like a cold composting method. When I say cold, I just mean you're not adding manure, so it's not going to heat up the pile. You're adding produce scraps and stuff like that. So more of like something you can continuously add to, and if you're in Florida, and if you're in an area where you have different rodent problems, or you're trying to avoid rodent problems, you might want to look into like a contained bin, like a rotating bin or anything like that to help reduce attracting anything that might be frowned upon in your community.
Okay, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And Jen, having known your area a little bit, I would just encourage you also to think outside the box. Like, you're near the ocean and there's animals around. You call a rancher, and the next thing you know, you're picking up fertilizer that they're looking to get rid of, manure. And, there may be places that seaweed is really aggregating at the shore. And so, don't miss those things that are free and that are right there in the neighborhood. It's like it's an adventure to go collect them. I always had fun with it. Jessica, yeah, you bet. Any ideas for dealing with gophers?
I've never had to deal with gophers. I've had to deal with groundhogs, but they don't build holes as fast as gophers. Um, I would say a raised bed or raised beds or something where you can put uh, a mesh screen or some kind of barrier between what you're growing food in and the actual ground. So I would build up if I had like a real like bad gopher problem where there's just like you can't get anything grown without them eating the roots or eating the plants. I would think about building up, and then I can establish like a separation that they can't get through, but water can still get through. And then I would just build up, and that's how I would deal with gophers.
Awesome. There's another question. What are your thoughts on vertical growing? And I don't know this word, but is pot sieve important?
Pot sieve.
SIVE?
I'm not sure what the reference is to the pot sieve. If you're talking about potting soil or
Bill, do you wanna
You got to turn yours down, honey. Hello. Yeah, so down here, a lot of the farmers that we have interacted with, they're growing everything vertical. You know, they have these poles with buckets, like 4 buckets on each pole, and they're growing up. So if we were to try to incorporate that, like in our backyard, like the pot size for a tomato would be different than a radish or for lettuce. I mean, is it that much? Is it very important? I guess is what I'm saying. Trying to grow versus a radish.
Yeah, when you say vertical growing, are you talking about growing in soil, or are you talking about like those growing towers where it's kind of like there's a nutrient solution that's run through, but there's no actual soil?
No, with soil. It's actually, they actually have, yeah, like buckets, like 3-gallon buckets, and I don't know how they got them to the pole.
Right.
But they're fastened to a pole with the dirt and the soil, and they're growing vertical because they don't have a lot of acreage.
Right.
The row plant.
Okay. Yeah. And your question is there a difference in the bucket size?
Right. Like for, like leafy vegetables, because we're like somebody had suggested, start with the lettuces, something that grows rather quickly. You can see it. It's in a community. It just looks like a beautiful flower. Whether or not I eat it or not, it still looks nice.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, when it comes to that, I would say the deeper the soil, the less you have to water it, and the more shallow the soil, the like less depth of the bucket, the more often you would have to water it. And if it's a little bit deeper, there's more access to nutrition for longer than if it's shallow. So I would say and obviously if you're planting like a root crop, you want it to be deeper than if you're planting like a leafy green or something that doesn't have like a long root. You're growing something, so you want to think about how deep the root has to go. And I would say like when I think about a raised bed, I usually like to do at least 12 inches, but that just depends. That allows me to grow almost anything. If you're growing lettuce, then 6 inches might be enough because that is like a fast turnover. And it wouldn't need to go down so far. So it does make a difference depending on what kind of design you want to have and what you want to actually grow. And that if you're growing in pots, I'd say that the nutrition is very important because there's not very far the roots can go to get nutrition. Say if it was like an in-ground garden, the roots can expand and they can use fungi to expand even farther. But if you have a pot, it's a very contained system. So you'd want to make sure you're regularly adding some type of nutrition so that you're replacing what's being taken out.
Okay. And so back to the compost. From start to finish, if I decided I have some vegetable scraps from, preparing dinner tonight, start to finish, how long does a compost pile take? I'm completely novice to.
Yeah, it depends on how you compost. So if you're doing like a compost bin, you can actually get certain bins that are designed to break down compost more quickly because they're a dark color and they get hotter and they have like an airflow like tube or tower in them so that you keep the compost aerated and it's able to, like, temperature affects the speed that your compost breaks down. So temperature is important and air is important. So if you get a contained system, you could find systems that help you get to start to finish faster. But if you're doing like just a pile system and you're not adding manure, it could take like, a whole year.
Okay.
So, but if you're doing like vermicompost, you can be harvesting like monthly because
Okay.
there's certain vermicompost systems where there's like layers, like shelves stacked, and there's like mesh, and like the worms will move up the different layers when you put food on top, and then you can like take the bottom like layer out and use that in your garden, and it makes compost really quickly because you have those worms breaking it down very quickly.
Thank you. I don't want to get ahead of Patrick, but he had mentioned your grow kits. Do you do consultations with new gardeners that they, say, hey, Jessica, I want to, an hour of your time, where like a YouTuber or a TikTok, or do you do anything like that to help new farmers?
Well, you can just email me,
Okay.
jessica@growfoodfilm.com, and I'm more than happy to like help direct people to the right resources or take a little bit of time. It's not like part of my business model. It's more just, if you have a question and I can help out.
Right.
That's fine.
Super. Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. So
Turn yours up, honey.
I muted Bill. We're back to radio silence here. So I got a question. Is well water naturally structured? We have a whole house aqua energizer device that we use to irrigate the garden with, but we also have a well-based landscape irrigation system. I'm wondering about adding advice to the hose outlet. So I'll start with this one, Jessica. So the way we talk about it is, if you think about the way the water goes up a tree, 100% of the water goes through the trunk. If you can put your whole house aqua energizer on the trunk before every branch, then 100% of your water is going through the aqua energizer and out to your branches. So ideally, if somebody has a connected system, then they can have a branch off and use one device. If you have separate water, all water is structured. There's no water that's not structured. Water in a well, water in a glass, water in a pipe. It's all structured. The question is it structured toward chaos or is it structured toward harmony? So in my experience from drip line kits and sending water back down into wells are improved by structuring. So is the water in a well already structured? Yes, it has a structure. Is that improved by an aqua energizer? Yes, that's my experience. Jessica, you've done some well stuff, I think. Do you have anything that would fill in around that answer or anything you want to share?
Yeah, when I was growing a garden in Virginia before I moved to Iowa, we had well water. And my experience is that if water just sits and is not moving, then it's not being like structured in a natural way. It's not like continuously like keeping that energy up. So from my experience, I say any water that's like sitting for long amounts of time and not flowing through some natural system would benefit from having a device attached to it to manually structure it before it's being used. That's, for me, doesn't matter if it's tap or if it's well. It's like usually sitting or going through straight pipes for way too long before it comes out of the faucet. So I think it's important to structure even well water.
I'm with you. It's kind of like, people who are active versus couch potatoes, like move your water, whether it's in your body or before you put it in your body. If you move it, it's more vibrant. So I'm with you on that. Jessica, do you approve of torn brown paper and cardboard for the 80% brown in compost?
I don't see, the thing with that is I'm not against it as a certain percentage of material, but not 100% because there's no nutrition in cardboard in paper, whereas in wood chips or leaves or straw, there's a lot more nutritional potential. So you could, if that is all you had, but unless you have no other options, I would not use as 100%. I would use the paper and cardboard in my garden under my mulch. And I would try to find a brown material, like from a natural source for my compost pile, because when you bring in natural materials, they are more the microbes are able to break them down more easily. So unless you were keeping that cardboard, unless you were shredding the cardboard and the paper to a small enough size that microbes could really munch down on it, if it's too big, it's going to be hard for them to break down. So unless you're spraying, if I would spray my bio booster on it, some kind of stimulation, some type of microbial food to start attracting the microbes to break it down. It would just require a little bit more work, but you could, although I wouldn't recommend it to be 100% of your high carbon material for your compost pile.
Great. And while we were just talking about the well water, somebody asked about, well, what about basic local water from the hose? And, even more so, guys, we would recommend a structured water device for that. Any water that's treated by the water company and comes through a log straight pipe is largely devoid of its energy and vitality when it gets to you. And simply moving it through one of our devices dramatically changes it. So for sure, that's water you want to structure. Do you have anything to add to that, Jessica?
No, I'm still on the filtration part. I haven't fully grasped. For me, if it was tap water, I'm kind of one of those people that's okay, how can I protect my microbes? And I am an overly cautious person, so I would put a water filter that filters out chlorine and chloramine, and then put a structuring device on the other end because. Right. Yeah.
And guys, if the connection is not obvious there, right, the reason the water company puts the chlorine in the water is to kill bacteria. And so here's Jessica gardening, and she's saying, I don't want that chlorine going in my garden. It's an obvious choice. If you're really protective of your microbiome, you don't want chlorine going in the garden. That would suggest filtering and structuring for the garden. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we actually caught up to all their questions. You guys are super engaged today. I get it. I love Jessica too. So Jessica, you've just given us such amazing information. I know everybody loved it just by the way they're with us. So thank you for being here with us. And what we're going to do, guys, is Jen's posting the link right now in the chat for the people that are on the live call to go to Jessica's website. And, she's part of the Grow Food Film. She's an amazing educator. She makes these boxes available as service. You don't get rich selling dirt supplements, but it's a service. And she's even given a discount code for us. And for those that are watching the replay, we'll put the link underneath this. And we welcome you. We highly encourage you to follow Jessica Smith. I mean, she is just a great voice in her industry. And if you want to learn from somebody who's passionate and knowledgeable and get a voice that you can follow and get good advice from, she's one of them. She's really, really a great voice. So, sign up for her email list, buy her products, ask her questions. She's just a great person for us all to know. And Jessica, that's our thanks, right? We're engaged with you. We want to follow you. Thank you so much for being here with us. You've been amazing.
Yes, I've really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me, Patrick. And thank you, everybody, for joining us and engaging with this material. And I wish you all the very best with your gardens and hope that they're full of abundance and nutritious food to increase our vibrations and help us all towards our own healthier selves and a healthier planet.
Amen to that. Well, good luck with your projects at school, and we look forward to circling back with you at some point in the future.
Thanks. Sounds great, Patrick. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.